We often get asked about how we plan our trips, and if you ask Zeke, he'll say that he gets an idea and then it just happens, like magic.
That's not what I meant. Although I do have to admit that when it comes to our trips, Terri does most of the planning.
And why is that?
Because you are a planner and you like to plan.
I'm also an anxious traveler and tend to have FOMO, or fear of missing out, and I want to make sure we aren't wasting our time or money. And your attention to detail is sometimes lacking.
That's fair.
So in today's video, we're going to share some of our strategies, tools, and approaches to planning both short and long trips.
When it comes to shorter trips, unless it's to celebrate something special like Terri's birthday, we won't do as much planning.
This is true. We can use our Sonoma County trip as a great example. For that trip, we stayed in a renovated mid-century modern motel and thought it would be fun to stay at others.
This is a great example of how we find something of interest and use it as the starting point. I think if I remember correctly, after having a really great experience at a mid-century motel in Santa Barbara, I searched for mid-century motels in California and the Flamingo Resort in Santa Rosa popped up.
We talked about how this was close enough for a 2-night getaway. It was within our price range and was in an area we hadn't really explored much.
So we booked the hotel, and then Terri put a call out to social media asking for ideas on places to eat, things to do, and maybe some sights to see.
And we got some really great ideas from our friends John and Sherry, who live in the area, and the itinerary loosely came together to stop in Santa Rosa for lunch, walk around downtown Santa Rosa, and then explore the Barlow in Sebastopol. And that was the extent of the planning.
And then we either saw signs for the trail or we asked some folks where else to go and went from there.
When we were driving around Sebastopol, we saw signs for the art walk and ventured in that direction. It was a low risk, not super expensive weekend, and we decided to be spontaneous, and it paid off. Have we had any similar trips that haven't paid off, or maybe that we were really disappointed by?
There have been a few times when we were looking for something to spice up a drive to Southern California to visit Adam or to San Diego, and we hoped we could find something along the way and failed miserably at being spontaneous. It was usually the traffic in LA.
Sometimes we don't have great success on the fly, but most of the time we do when we have something to anchor a trip around.
As for short but important trips like Terri's birthday weekend recently, we didn't leave much to chance. Terri is not good when she is disappointed.
I can't deny that. So for that trip, we'd been to Healdsburg before, we'd been to the wineries before, and we'd even stayed at several of the hotels before.
We'd considered staying at the new hotel that is part of the same hotel family as the H2 and the Hotel Healdsburg, but the reviews weren't great, and we decided to stay at a place we stayed at a long time ago with the kids, and what we thought was a low-risk, high-confidence choice. Turned out pretty bad.
Yep, that's the challenge. Do you go with something new or something you've experienced before? With this recent experience, I'm still inclined to go with something familiar and take risks on other parts of the trip, like restaurants. This is my approach for Italy, when we will stay at the same places in May that I stayed at with our son last June for Rome, Umbria, and Venice.
How did you find the restaurants? With the exception of the hotel in Healdsburg, you made all the reservations.
I wanted to eat at women-owned and operated restaurants, so I did a quick Google search and found Lo and Behold for Thursday night and Single Thread for my actual birthday. I also put a call out to social media, and John came through again with Bravas for lunch on Thursday.
And since I don't drink anymore, and you aren't much of a wine taster, you booked one appointment for Preston Winery for Thursday and one appointment for Friday at the Lambert Bridge Winery, both of which we've been to several times before, but not since before COVID.
Yeah, we were both wine club members at both of them for a number of years, and I wanted to see what the experience was like post-COVID. And boy, have things changed. It's amazing what a pandemic and 6 or 7 years will do. And we will talk about that in an upcoming April video on Healdsburg.
Not everything was planned. I know you wanted to leave some room for spontaneity.
Well, and that's a really great point. We follow destinations and restaurants on social media, and Instagram serves up recommendations that sometimes work. As a result, I had a few places on yellow sticky notes in my planner to keep in mind, like the Healdsburg Bubble Bar, a brand new place I saw on Instagram, which ended up being great fun.
As for the hotel, we wanted to be gone 3 nights, but we couldn't get the 3rd night at the same hotel in Healdsburg. I didn't want to move hotels and wanted to do something different. While I was looking around the area online, Safari West popped into my brain.
Like magic.
Ta-da! Yes, like magic. I'm special that way.
We're not going to talk about just how truly special you are.
Lucky for you, this brilliant idea came to me. We talked about going to Safari West for well over 20 years, and you even gave me a gift certificate one year that was never used.
I think I still have it.
That would have been nice to know a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I know. You're right. But if I spent time looking for it, I would have spent the entire afternoon cleaning my office, and we know I didn't have time for that.
So that's a short but special trip. Find an anchor, do some Googling, put a call out on social media for ideas, make some reservations, leave some time for spontaneity.
Yep, that sums it up quite nicely, Zeke. As for big trips, it depends on who is taking charge.
What do you mean, who is taking charge? When have you ever left me in charge of a big trip?
Fair enough, but aren't you planning our trip to Vancouver in June?
Some might call it planning. We have flights that you booked. We have a home exchange that I was on the phone call for, but you've handled all the communications and the home exchange docs and the prep. I heard about a good hot dog place.
Oh, no.
What more do you need? I'm sure it'll be easy to find a place to rent bikes, and didn't they mention a car share company with available cars within a short walk of the house? We'll figure that out when it gets there.
Oh my God, I can't. Okay, breathe, just breathe. It will be fine.
But you have a slightly different approach to big trips.
You could say that. I have a whole process that might be helpful for you to know and understand.
I know it often involves ChatGPT, Bing AI, maps, guidebooks, social media, YouTube videos, talking to friends, and some Google Sheets. It's simple, really.
You are so lucky to have me. Once we or I have an idea for a trip, I'll discuss it high level with whoever I'm traveling with, whether it's you or one of the kids. And then I'll start watching YouTube videos on the top places to visit in those areas and use ChatGPT and Bing AI to learn more. I capture them in a Google Sheet, usually with a tab for each city. And once I have a sense of what we're doing, I come up with a theme.
A theme?
Yes, a theme. When Adam and I went to Amsterdam, Paris, and to Italy, we had a theme of philosophy, food, and art, also called the Fart Tour. And when I traveled with our youngest to France and Switzerland the previous year, the trip was built around meeting up with friends all around Europe.
What's our theme for this May? I know. That's amore, or that's a no more.
Funny, no. It's based on places that I want to go with you after my trip with Adam last year, but with a few more cities tossed in around the itinerary and to deal with basic logistics. We needed to stop somewhere between Umbria and Venice, so we chose Verona. We couldn't get a direct train from Milan to Lyon, so we ended up in Bordeaux, which is a bummer because I was really hoping to meet up with Sophie and Sandy, our home exchange friends, in Lyon.
If I recall, we were all over the place initially.
Yeah, it's true. I considered doing an all-Italy trip, including time in Sicily and Naples, but then I realized I couldn't go to Europe and not go to Paris, so France got thrown into the mix.
Did we ask anyone for any ideas on this trip?
No, not really, but if anyone does have any places they want to recommend for Rome, Umbria, Verona, Venice, Bergamo, Bordeaux, and Paris, I would be happy to add them to the list and maybe do some recon for you.
What about the Madonna della Corona west of Verona? Didn't that influence part of our trip in Italy?
Yeah, we weren't going to have time to go before Verona and Venice, and it didn't make sense to drive from Venice and then drive back. So I decided that we could leave out of Milan and then see it on the drive from Venice to Milan. And then Donato, our local friend and restaurateur, is from Bergamo, and he'd often talked about it, and I wanted to see it. Milan seemed to require more than a night, so I booked Bergamo, and we were flying out of Milan Airport, which is outside of Milan, like San Francisco Airport is outside of San Francisco. As with a lot of the trip decisions, they were based on logistics.
How did you figure out which hotels to book?
Initially, we were going to wing it and book hotels as we went along, but then I wanted to stay at the Papadopoli in Venice, and then I booked that. And then we booked a show in Verona, and I didn't not want to have a hotel there. I wanted to show you the castle in Perugia, so I had to book that. And then I wanted to know where we were going when I landed in Rome, so decided to stay where Adam and I stayed last year. And well, you get the picture. The more I booked, the more I felt compelled to book the rest of the hotels. We do have one night without any plans between Umbria and Verona that I hopefully doesn't end up being a complete and total shit show.
It will be fine, but I understand it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. As for which hotels I look for when in Europe, I first look at Accor hotels to see what's available. And when that doesn't work, then I look at United Mileage Plus VIP site and our Capital One credit card site for deals. And when those don't pan out, I do a basic Google search, read reviews until I say, fuck it, book a hotel one city at a time.
As for restaurants, have you made any reservations?
Only one in Verona, because Donato and Juan, Donato's wine guy and business partner, said we couldn't miss it. Otherwise, we will ask at the hotel, see what we see when we walk by, and take our chances. I don't mind doing this, and we have a pretty good success rate. But once again, if anyone has any suggestions for us, we are happy to hear them for all of those cities for our May trip.
Are we doing any tours or do we have any events planned? And if so, how did you figure those out?
We only have one reservation so far, and that's in Verona at the amphitheater. I really didn't care what we were going to see there. I just wanted to be there for a performance. We're seeing Il Volo, which is apparently a young opera group.
What is popra?
I had to look that up. It's pop and opera, and it's 3 young guys in their 20s who sing opera and I guess make it accessible. Once again, it doesn't matter what we see there. Since we experienced an amazing concert at the amphitheater in Orange, France in 2015, I know it's about the experience of being there and not the actual content.
This seems like a pretty loosey-goosey itinerary for you. Is this still going to work for you?
Yeah, I think so. I do have a few things I'd like to do when we're in Rome, like go to the Palazzo Museums, and when we're in Bordeaux, I do want to go to Saint-Emilion. Otherwise, each place we're visiting is beautiful and we can't help but walk, drive, or stumble into some amazing places.
It will be fine. It will be more than fine. It will be great. You'll be with me. What more can you ask for?
When we get back, will you actually plan Vancouver?
Let's not overcomplicate that trip.
Maybe we should reach out to Anne at Travel Key and have her plan it for us. We haven't used a travel agent since we had my aunt book her hotel in Paris for my 40th birthday.
Maybe not for Vancouver, but after talking to her last week, there is definitely value in using a travel agent. The industry has radically changed in the past 15 years, and people like Anne are more like travel advisors.
It makes sense with so much available online, but at the same time, some people just don't want to do all the research that is often necessary to make for a great trip, or they feel like it's risky. They only have a certain amount of time and budget, and they want it to be perfect. Travel advisors or agents like Anne take on the responsibility for the research, the reservations, and the hand-holding if something goes wrong during the trip. And it's nice to have a single point of contact to help with resolving those issues while you're on your trip.
As for the costs, we have friends who used a local travel agent to book a trip to Italy, and they felt it was cost effective. The fee seemed nominal to us. They were extremely happy with the results.
Yeah, and according to Anne, most of her clients are still booking their own flights, but they're leaving the rest of it up to her and her team. This includes hotels, restaurants, tours, cruises, and pre-scheduled ride services to and from the airport or other form of transportation. We're in conversations with Anne to collaborate on a trip later this year.
How do you know Anne?
Well, we grew up together in Castro Valley and reconnected on Facebook. She and her husband have retired from their first careers and have taken over her parents' travel agency since their retirement. And like many people our age, including us, they are combining their passion for travel and helping people for their next career.
All 4 of us, you, me, Anne, and her husband, Pat, all want to inspire more people over 50 in our generation to get out and get uncomfortable through travel and adventure.
Absolutely. And I think that covers how we plan short and long trips depending upon level of importance of the trip. We'll have a blog post as usual on our website with an example of the Google Sheet templates I now use consistently for my big trip planning, along with a list of the things that we, well, more specifically I do, when planning a trip. I did forget to mention that where we go and when often depends on whether we can get a direct flight with decent seats at a reasonable price, usually on United. It's how Adam and I ended up flying into Amsterdam and flying out of Rome.
I don't care much about that, and I will fly in the middle seat on a budget airline.
Well, you can do that without me on one of your cycling trips, or I can book you an economy middle seat in the back of the plane near the restrooms in a seat that doesn't recline, and then I'll use the savings to fly first class instead of business class.
But that, I wouldn't be sitting next to you.
As for you, our audience, what tools, tips, and tricks do you use that we might be overlooking?
We'd love to hear from you. So send us an email at zekeandterri@gmail.com or drop a note in the comments.
We'd also appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel as we continue to provide weekly videos on our travel adventures.
While some of our trips may not look like adventures, we believe that any travel that is a little or a lot uncomfortable is an adventure.
Thanks again for watching, and now back to navigating our lives and the world together.